When it comes to food, our first instinct is usually to refrigerate it so it stays fresh longer. But that isn't always the case. In today's times, refrigeration is a substantial practice in every kitchen and household. It goes a long way in preserving our food and maintaining its quality. But did you know, despite popular belief, refrigerating certain foods can actually change their flavor and not in a good way? It can even reduce their nutritional quality or accelerate the spoiling process. And in today's video, we will tell you about 21 such foods that you should never refrigerate. From melons, cakes, peanut butter, honey, to bread and more, watch till the end to learn about all of them. Tomatoes. Tomatoes are best kept at room temperature rather than in the fridge. When exposed to cold temperatures, the texture of tomatoes can become mealy and lose their flavor. It's recommended to store tomatoes on the counter at room temperature for 1 to 2 days. However, if they are left out any longer than that, they may go bad. To keep them fresh for longer periods, it's best to store unripe tomatoes stem side down on a flat surface, away from direct sunlight. Potatoes. Potatoes should never be placed in the fridge as the cold temperatures can break down the starches in them, which changes the taste and texture. It's best to store potatoes in a cool, dry space to keep them fresh. Potatoes should be kept away from light to avoid them turning green, which indicates that they are becoming toxic. Melons. Melons are another food item that should not be refrigerated. Once refrigerated, they tend to break down and become powdery and grainy, affecting their taste and texture. It's best to store them at room temperature before they are cut open. After cutting, store them in the fridge for 3 to 4 days. Basil. Basil is a great herb to have around the house, but it needs to be stored properly to maintain its freshness and flavor. Basil should be kept at a temperature of at least 40 degrees Fahrenheit. If it is stored at a temperature less than this, black marks may appear on the plant, which can ruin its taste. Be sure to keep it in a little bit of water and in the shade to keep it fresh for longer periods. Bananas. Bananas are a tropical fruit, so they don't benefit from the cooler climate of a fridge. The cold temperature can actually have the reverse effect by turning them black quicker. It's recommended to buy bananas before they're ripe and let them mature at room temperature in your kitchen. If you want to slow down the ripening process, you can separate the bananas and wrap the stems with plastic wrap. Onions. Onions should not be stored in the fridge. They depend on clear and open air circulation to keep them fresh. Whether they're chopped or fried, you need to look after them the same way you would any other food. It's recommended to keep them far away from your potatoes since they can speed up the onion's aging processes. Onions should be kept in different parts of the kitchen, away from light and heat. Cucumbers. Cucumbers should also not be stored in the fridge. Storing them in the fridge will make them watery and pitted. If you do choose to refrigerate them, it's best to wrap them up in plastic to minimize the moisture. Butter. Butter can be stored on the counter, covered, for a week or so, depending on temperatures. However, it's best to refrigerate butter and take it out one stick at a time. If the weather is very hot, you may opt for smaller quantities. Make sure to keep butter away from foods with strong odors, as it can easily absorb them. Honey. Honey should never be stored in the fridge as colder temperatures can alter its chemical makeup and cause it to crystallize and seize up. Instead, store honey in a cool, dry place away from direct sunlight. It has a seemingly never-ending shelf life, so it's easy to keep it fresh and ready for use. Oils. Most oils are safe to store at room temperature, but oils with lower saturated fat content like safflower or sunflower benefit from being kept cool. Nut-based oils should be refrigerated. Garlic. Garlic should be kept somewhere dry and warm. If stored in the fridge, it will attract mold on the skin and within the inner layers of each bulb, causing it to sprout early. Mature white wines. White wines are best served chilled, but mature white wines like Chardonnay should not be stored in the fridge. Instead, they are better appreciated at slightly warmer temperatures. If you have a wine fridge, set it at 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit for the most ideal option. Hot sauces. Hot sauces containing vinegar and certain preservatives that slow down molding and bacteria growth can be stored at room temperature. Keeping them in the fridge might reduce their strength, so it's better to store them on the kitchen counter. Peanut butter. Peanut butter is best stored in the cupboard at room temperature. Keeping it in the fridge hardens the spread and makes it difficult to apply to bread. Chocolate. Chocolate should be kept in a cool, dry place, away from other odorous ingredients. The fridge can tamper with its taste, color, and texture. Dark chocolate, in particular, can be beneficial to your health. Peaches. Fresh peaches that are not yet ripe should not be stored in the fridge as cold temperatures hinder the ripening process. Instead, store them on the countertop and only chill them if they're about ready to be eaten. Aged specialty cheese. Hard cheeses like Gouda and cheddar tend to retain their flavor better without refrigeration. However, shredded cheddar should be refrigerated. To store sharp cheddar without refrigeration, wipe the cut side of the cheese with white vinegar and then gently dry it off. Next, wrap the cheese inside a cheesecloth and then wrap the block inside butcher's paper, parchment, or wax paper. Keep it away from warm surfaces and direct sunlight. Coffee beans. Coffee beans should not be stored in the fridge as the humidity can cause condensation to form on them, affecting their flavor. Instead, store them in an airtight container in the pantry or on the counter. Bread, especially white bread, should not be put in the fridge. When not kept in a cool, dry place, bread dries up very fast. The best way to store it is to take out the amount you'll be eating in the next 4 days, and then deep freeze the rest. Citrus fruits. Citrus fruits like lemons, limes, oranges, and grapefruits are all juicy fruits that don't need to be refrigerated. Instead, they are best preserved in a countertop fruit basket. But what if you don't plan on eating them for a few weeks? Well, you can still keep them outside the fridge. Just find a cool, dry, and well-ventilated place like your cupboard and store them there until you're ready to gobble them up. Now let's talk about cake. While some cakes need to be stored in the fridge, frosting-free cakes and those topped with ganache or buttercream will be fine for up to 3 days stored in an airtight container on the counter. If you're worried that a whole cake will spoil before you can eat it, cut it into small slices and store them in the freezer. This will prevent them from drying out. Now, it's always important to be mindful of your sugar intake. Eating too much cake or sugar can be bad for your body and lead to many health problems. It's always a good idea to know about your sugar levels so that you can control them at the right time before they cause any harm. Some food doesn't need to be refrigerated, and now you know how to store them properly. How many of these foods are you guilty of refrigerating? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more food storage tips and tricks. See you in the next video.